historian
Claims.
collecting the accounts of eyewitnesses.
Claims.
Right. So this is, you said it wasn't from the time. He's making a statement saying he's making account from eyewitnesses, which was my statement to you.
No, he hasn't said. Read it again. He said that there were. He didn't say he's consulted eyewitnesses. He said there were eyewitnesses. Is at no point in that does he say he had any contact with the eyewitnesses. Just that his belief and his research led him to have no doubt about those eyewitnesses. It doesn't say anything about he met them because he couldn't have met them.
That's an interesting subject, to be honest.
Have met them.
No. Again, Luke.
Yeah, but I would say to you, if that was something that was like purely revealed by God,
You're right.
that you would not expect to have this kind of things.
Why?
No.
Why?
Definitely.
Why?
Because, like it says at the beginning of this chapter,
Yes.
you see many have undertaken to compile a narrative about the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as the original witness and servants of the words handed down to us.
Right.
Also, it seems good to me, since I have carefully investigated everything.
Right.
Investigate.
What does investigate entail?
Investigating
We don't know.
means
It can be. It depends what you're investigating.
all
and when.
witnesses shall you come. All the narratives.
All the people who talked
Can you
to people
bring
who
me
said
all
they
your
were
witnesses?
Would you substantiate an investigation? Or would you just write any claim?
No, you would try and substantiate
Right.
as best you can.
Right.
But that doesn't make it completely 100%
Exactly
true.
like he said. Investigate everything
Yeah.
carefully.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
So what would... So
I mean, it's
carefully
clear.
would mean interrogating the eyewitnesses as well.
Not necessarily, because if the eyewitnesses weren't available, it would mean tracking down maybe people who knew the eyewitnesses.
Which would
their
be the
surviving
apostles.
Family. Not necessarily. No, it would mean maybe their family or people who have come on.
But when you read the book of Luke, it gives the that's why it gives details,
Give names of
historical...
all the
Yeah, but
eyewitnesses.
I would say if you would expect, I know actually the Christian belief generally.
Yes.
But I would say when you take this statement, that's purely someone, and I'm not denying it. I'm not even saying
Right.
that what has been said in the Gospels or not 100% the truth from Jesus.
Right.
But I'm saying as well that I don't know if it's 100% from Jesus.
Right.
Why? Because as a Muslim, we have as well the Hadith, which we believe being a collection of sayings about the Prophet.
Right.
And like you know,
They come
that
hundreds
says,
of years later.
Obviously, we have
Right.
one transmission. And then you have 10 transmission about this. There's a kind of thinking about the
Right.
transmissions.
So are you a Muslim?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so I don't want to divert, but in terms of, we'll stick to the gospel
Like I
part.
would say to you, for example, the Hadith Ahad,
Yes.
having a single chain of transmission,
Yes.
this one I would not use it for belief,
Right.
or I would not use it for something specific, because
Right.
that's so singular.
Right, but this is the difference. The hadiths were written down 200 years later, for example, by people like Bukhari. You might want to join our historical conversation. But in sense of the hadith, they're written down 200 years later.
Yep.
Whereas with the Gospels, were written within the lifespan of the apostles.
There's a difference between being collected and
Right.
being written.
Right.
We do believe, and this as well, this as well says in books, referring to some books from the earliest transmitters, saying that they had some books about narration
Right.
from Malik, but we do not have these books itself.
Right.
But we have a Bukhari
Yes.
who transmitted from these people.
Right.
He says that he collected himself
Yes.
from people
Yeah.
at the beginning. I would say this is a historical
It
claim.
is a historical claim.
That's it. But then,
Right.
if you believe that something will be revealed by God, from God to a prophet, you
Yeah.
will not expect having
But
this statement.
that's a presupposition.
No.
Yes, it is.
That's the truth.
Okay, give me a book from a prophet, apart from Muhammad, that has been revealed in the way that you claim. What is the evidence for that? Because you believe there are many prophets before
I'm
Muhammad.
not even saying about.
I'm asking you. Let me even make my point.
Go.
Because you made the claim. You said this is not written in the way you would expect a book to be revealed by God.
Okay.
So my claim was
Yes.
to substantiate your claim. Let's remove Muhammad. Bring me another prophet and demonstrate what book they had and show me how it was revealed.
Okay, I'm not even talking about what I do believe and what I do not believe.
Yes, but I'm saying substantiate your claim.
Exactly.
I'm saying, because what you're giving me is a preconception of what you believe. So I'm saying, give me the evidence that substantiates the claim.
Okay, no problem. You take the whole Testament.
Yes.
You say, so the Eternal, or the Lord, or I don't know, you say Elohim, said,
right,
and then you have the claim.
Okay.
Okay. Now, even if you take Deuteronomy chapter 29, you see Moses talking.
Right.
And then he say, and I am the Eternal. And that's still him talking. You can take the King James Version Bible, and you say like, but that's Moses talking, and he says, I am the Eternal, Elohim, or how would you say eternal? Which I'm French, that's the way it's called in what Bible?
What you have
Elohim,
to go to,
I don't.
Yeah, you'd have to say the passage in particular, because I'm not sure what
that's not a problem.
passage you're talking about.
If you let me, like, just sometimes to bring it up. So, Deuteronomy. So, Deuteronomy 29.
Yeah.
Wallahi Khalifa, never give up your day job, Wallahi. Please. You're gonna go hungry.
I think it's 29, 22. I can't find the verse again.
And the claim is that Moses was speaking as Elohim.
He was speaking, but when he said, I am Elohim, I am the Lord.
No, but there's the statement where he says, I will appear as the Most High.
Yeah, that's it. So this is Moses, yeah? This is Deuteronomy 29, yeah?
Yeah, what verse?
29, yeah? You take it from 2, that's where Moses is talking.
Yeah.
And that's the King James Version, Bible, okay?
Let me get the King James.
What about
Okay, so Deuteronomy 29.
29, yeah?
Verse 2, King James.
You start from the 2, yeah? King James.
Yeah.
Start from number 2. That's here.
Yeah.
And then you go down and until 6.
Okay.
Ye have not eaten bread, neither have ye drunk wine or strong drink, that ye might not that I am the Lord your God.
Yes.
And there's nothing saying the Lord said or something. It goes straight from Moses' mouth to speak.
Okay.
So my statement is, and even on that, I'm not saying what I do believe and not do believe, but you would expect for something that is revealed, or already speaking, saying the Eternal says, the Eternal says this, or speaking directly, like we see in the Psalm, or saying, like, for example, I am the Lord while a human speak. That would be something such as a revelation, just based on the Bible logic. But when you see someone coming and talking and saying, I did my best to gather all the narration from witness, and I did my best, I'm saying, okay, you're a historian, and you gather all your narrations,
right?
And I'm not denying everything that you gather, but I'm saying, okay, but that's not revealed to you.
Okay, so
what you might say revealed, it has been given to Jesus and then shared with other people. For example, I'll give you an example. There's a verse, you know, about the lady sending stones, the adultery lady.
Yeah, the stone of the adulteress. John chapter 8. Yeah, he who is without sin, let them cast the first stone.
We know that this verse wasn't actually in the original manuscript.
Well, it was something that was alluded to by the early church, but it was, but the place it sat within the scripture wasn't always concrete, but it was always accepted as a revealed, like an inspired
the
story.
Manuscript, it wasn't there, yeah? So I'm saying that's where I would say being intelligent would mean, okay, we take the message, we're not sticking on the verse, Why? Because obviously we have narrations.
Yes.
And the narration, you can lose information and you can increase something.
Right.
And that's where we get this.
Okay, but what is the point with that last statement that you're making? Because we find the exact problem, same thing within the Quran transmission. When we look at the manuscripts,
Okay.
there are many variants. So if you're trying to say that's not from God, that's why I'm just trying to clarify your point before, because I would like to apply the same consistent argument you're applying to the Bible, and let's see if that then translates to the Quran, because you are aware of the different recitations. Because you sound studied to me, the recitation.
But the different recitation that
Right.
we have are not wide different.
Are you aware of Ibn Masud's Codex?
Okay.
Are you? If you're not aware, I can go into that. If you're not,
You can share with me everything that you want.
okay, that's fine. But I'll let you make your statement
No,
first.
but I'm saying the Quran doesn't have this such extent. With the Quran, this is a recitation. Unlike the Christian and the Jewish,
Yeah.
we have an oral tradition, meaning a recitation,
Right.
which you learn by heart by the whole Ummah. That's a huge difference that we have compared to the Jewish and the Christian. The second things, the manuscripts, we can have maybe in some manuscripts certain things, so maybe certain variants or
Right.
even certain words
Right.
which are not there. But saying this, the oral tradition, the transmission, meaning the recitation that we learn by heart, has been transmitted in the whole Ummah.
What are you discussing?
No. Siraj,
No,
we'll
what you
discuss
discussing?
later. No,
What are you discussing about it?
with the origin of the Quran, the recitations.
The recitations.
Yeah.
Ask him what's the difference between version and dialect.
I'll discuss with you later on.
No, discuss with me.
No,
come.
but I'm saying.
No, come discuss with me.
No,
No.
not now.
You want to know,
Not-
yes?
Not now.
Why not? Why not
We
me?
will have a discussion.
Let me
why
talk
not
with
me?
Paperboy.
Yeah.
Wait,
Paperboy.
Yeah.
wait.
Siraj,
If he wants to know,
Siraj,
why would he discuss with you?
We
Ask
can
him
have a
the
discussion.
different versions of the Bible.
That's what we
They
were
have
talking.
different versions.
I know.
We have different dialects.
I know.
Version and dialect is not the same. Christians, I don't know what's wrong with
I
them.
got.
Siraj,
Dialect, American English, USA English.
Siraj, you're
Let's say
interjecting in his.
Canadian English.
Siraj,
New
don't be
Zealand
rude.
English,
Siraj,
Australian English.
Siraj,
Ask him
Siraj,
what's the difference.
Siraj, let
The
your.
dialects is Syrian Arabic. Arab
Siraj,
have
if
different
you
dialects.
want to talk to me, we'll
you
talk
want to
about
know about
not now.
Islam? No, do you want to know about Islam?
Not from you.
Do you want to know
Not
about
from
dialects?
you.
Oh,
Not from you.
him.
Later.
I want to bring
Yeah.
the subject. The
Siraj.
base wasn't
Siraj.
the Quran, the basic.
We'll talk later.
No, I will
Siraj,
teach you.
we'll talk
If you want to
later.
talk about the Quran, I didn't want to talk specifically about Quran. You will show me quickly.
That's fine.
If you don't mind, and then if you want to talk about
I'll
Quran,
talk to him later.
No,
No.
stand here if you want. Yalla.
I don't want any.
Yalla,
Because I'll teach him.
Inshallah.
You need to
Siraj.
ask him. Look, brother. Look, brother.
Yes, but I'm not. He wants to
Why
debate. I'll
he wants
debate
to
him
know about
later.
Islam,
Yalla.
but
Right.
He wants to discuss with him, not me.
Yalla.
I will teach him.
Listen.
So, brother, you ask him Quran verses, all the words of the Allah we have in the Quran, yes, with all the dialects. But the Bible, some versions are missing.
So
some
brother,
versions.
so what was that?
So do you
Let's
understand that?
continue where
so
we left
why
off.
this verse is removed
just
from this
ignore
version,
it.
like
Don't-
other versions,
there's a saying,
and it's
don't-
only valid in King James version.
Don't-
like
don't
example,
read-
1 John chapter 5 verse 7.
Inshallah.
Also,
I know the Bible.
Gospel of John chapter 5 verse 4. I can give you.
Siraj.
Ask him
Siraj,
why is only
let him
valid
speak
in
for
King
himself.
James version, but other versions are removed.
You're just talking. No one's listening to what you're saying. Siraj. Siraj.
Inshallah, brother. So tell me.
Yes. So let's go back to where I've forgotten where we were at.
Go for it.
Yeah, we can stick to the Bible, that's fine. But what I'm trying to say is we have to have a consistent standard. And if you want to hold the Bible to a certain
The
standard.
consistent standard has to be from both sides.
Exactly.
Like I'm saying,
Yes.
we're talking about manuscripts.
Right.
Like I said to you, we have the oral transmissions,
Right.
which you do not have.
But are you aware the the claim of oral transmission contradicts the empirical manuscript evidence?
Okay, give me example.
Okay.
I didn't learn it because I know that loads of studies has been going
Yes.
on. But then tell me.
So in terms of the origin of the Quran, what would you say is your knowledge? Then I can then.
No, just explain me what you want to tell me.
So for example, we have in the Hadith that there was a disagreement between Umar and Hisham in terms of the recitation of the Quran, where where Umar heard the recitation, said that's not the Quran, took him by the neck to the Prophet, and then that's where we get the hadith that says there was the Quran was revealed in 7 modes. Now we clearly know that the hadiths were not written down until 200 years later, so that makes it the historicity of that claim dubious. Then we also have the hadith that says that Uthman burned all the variants of the Quran until there was 1 copy left, and that was then sent out to the different regions for the Ummah to learn. So we have from the start 2 contradictory hadiths. One says that it was revealed in 7 modes, and we also have one where it says Umar burnt all the Qurans and there was 1 standardized one.
Okay.
So if there was 1, then what happened to the other 6 would be the first claim, because that's why it's contradictory, because Muslims appeal to the oral tradition.
Okay.
Now, if the oral tradition was so prevalent, you would not have had Uthman standardize the Quran, which was a written text, because of the
A written text.
But when he standardized it, it was a written text.
It was a written text.
Right.
Yeah?
So my question would be, the first question, if the strength was in the oral preservation, why did Uthman collect a written tradition and make 1 standardized version instead of harmonizing the oral recitation? Because remember, the prevalence.
But who told you that this was a different oral different oral transmission?
Well, I'll get into the claims of that, but the first thing I want to. I will go into that.
Okay, no problem.
But
because at the meeting I'm saying.
One thing only, I'm going. I'm telling him something.
I mean, historically, they say that they were collected 10 years after the death.
No?
There was a program I was watching with, Tovia.
Okay, so what's that? So my claim would be this: Muslims appeal to oral tradition, oral preservation, recitation of the Quran.
That's what I was interested in.
So my question would be, to simplify it, is why would they then collect a mushaf to preserve the Quran as per Uthman, if the strength of the Quran was in the oral tradition? Why there would be no need to write a mushaf?
There would always be a need.
Do you get my point?
Yeah, no, but listen. Something that can be read is in a language will always be written at some point.
Right.
It can be revealed. It's the same.
Right.
The thing is, the revelation given to the prophets in the Old Testament has been written down, or has it been revealed at the minute they were written down? No.
Yeah, that's no problem. I can go with that. My point would be then, if there was an importance in terms of written text to accompany the oral tradition, the oral text should be in line with the oral tradition as well. What we're seeing is a divergence, and then you're saying, well, we have the oral tradition.
What type of divergence do you see?
In terms of the way, in terms of none of the manuscripts agree with each other. There's variance.
But agree in which way?
So in terms of, with the recitations, for example, the way the words are spelt, I'm sure, like for example, Malik and Maliki. I don't know if you've heard of. I'm not sure if you've heard Muslims.
No. Give me those examples.
Okay.
Very interesting on this one.
No, that's fine, because I'm just. If you're not aware, then I can show you the evidence. But I'm just trying to see what your base knowledge is. So I'll give you an example.
My humble knowledge.
Dr. Google.
It's nothing to do with Google. So
that's cool.
I'll give you a scholar. I'm going to give you a scholar, and then I'll give you scholarly. So this is from the Quran and its historical context.
Okay.
Gabriel Said Reynolds. He's at the University of Notre Dame. He does like Quranic studies, historical studies. So in terms of, so he starts off saying the common belief that the Quran has a single unambiguous reading is due in part to the bravado of translators, but continue, it says, yet it is above all due to the terrific success of the standard Egyptian edition of the Quran, first published in July 1924.
Okay.
So it says, the scholars who worked on the project did not seek to reconstruct the ancient form of the Quran, but rather to preserve one of the canonical Qiraat readings, that of Hafs. Ibn Mujahid argued that there are 7 equally valid Qiraat. Some argued for 10, some argued for 14.
Yeah, but you have. I would just say to you, like, if you do agree that
Right.
this is in the pronunciation of certain words, and then we are in the slight pronunciation of particles wa, wadhalika, or wa instead of thumma.
Right.
The text and the meanings is strictly the structure is almost still the same.
Right. So
Now, obviously, can you make the difference between suspicion and reasonable doubt? When you want to create suspicions on something, when you don't have reasonable things to push you for that. Tell me.
well, you could use them synonymously in this explanation. So if someone has reasonable doubt, you could call that suspicion.
I can say that
Right.
if I was coming and claiming the same things for all the Christians, and the Bible was perfectly the same in Hebrew, in Greek or Aramean,
Right.
or let's say in Hebrew,
Right.
and then the only difference that we wouldn't find in the manuscript would be only this pronunciation, this small particle, but the structure would be the same. You would be the first one to tell me, this is nothing what you're doing. You're actually, how do you say? You're overreacting or you're abusing. This is, how can I say?
But let me just interject. Christians,
You're
in a
not
sense,
genuine, you see, you're
yeah,
not-
but Christians wouldn't have a position, a necessary opposition to that position, because in terms of the Bibles, and as Siraj was
Yes.
mentioning,
Yeah.
the different variations, as you mentioned, John
Exactly.
John
The-
8.
the-
So, but the thing I'm stating is because your first proposition started off, if God reveals something, it should be done in this way.
Okay.
So, alluding to a better way of revealing the text, and that's why even we have the Islamic concept of perfect preservation. So, this is what is brought from by Muslim. Their claim of divinity is that every Quran is letter for letter, dot for dot, exactly the same.
Okay.
This is the sign from God, the perfect preservation.
Okay.
So that's why, let me just respond, is why I would then attack that claim.
Okay. The meaning is perfectly the same through the whole Quran. So let's take this hadith that you mentioned. Either this was really from Qatada or whoever, with I don't know who, and he says the truth, and this was related to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
You meant to just move back a little, just a bit.
You're going to tell them to step back because they're going to reverse you.
Yeah. Do you mind just moving just a bit loud?
Yeah, you finished with that?
No, it's just a bit loud because you're right.
Oh,
yeah.
The camera. Sorry.
Cameras are there. Also,
No, anyway.
No,
Anyway,
no.
like I'm
One
saying,
second.
like I'm saying,
you have your guys recording through your channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine, no problem.
like I'm saying, either these.
No problem.
Yeah. Just finish. I don't want to
No.
Like I said to you, either this hadith
Right.
is true, then it is announced. And we're not saying that it is against our laws, because the meaning is exactly the same.
Right.
But the structure, obviously in the manuscript, in all manuscripts in the world, you will find some mistakes or some things by Sunday. So obviously you're going to see a wa thumma, or
Right.
something which may be added in manuscript. This one is just related to human errors.
Yeah.
But the oral transmission itself has been transmitted from the time of the Prophet ﷺ until now. And for this one, you said you're going to come back to it. For this one, there is no proof that these transmissions is different from the old.
Yeah. Don't worry.
It's
No.
different. Sorry.
No,
It's different from the old transmissions sent by the Prophet ﷺ
Right.
back in the day. If that hadith is wrong, then it's just wrong, because this hadith is probably singular, ahad, like we said, transmitted by one person. And if it's transmitted by one person, we have as well plenty, million of hadiths
Right.
that the scholar reject, even though the sanad is sahih.
Right.
So we have dishonesty
But
regarding that.
But this is the thing. You appeal to a claim, the oral tradition, basically saying, "Trust me, bro." Because when we want to substantiate it, we cannot go to a first century after Hijrah Muslim and say recite it. We can only look at what we have now, or then we can look at the written evidence to see if it is in line with the oral tradition. And this is what there's a lot of discrepancies, because we don't see as you're saying, there's the differences in some of the like vowelization and whatnot. So if you're saying that is okay for the written tradition, but then the oral tradition would be different, would be more consistent.
Okay.
Is that the claim that you're making?
I'm saying to you, you may find this slight difference in in some manuscripts because this is consistent.
But would we find that same variation in the oral?
But firstly, this is extremely minor,
Right.
meaning this is no structure as we have it in the Bible.
Right.
We can't compare. Do you agree that we can't compare this difference related to what we find in the Bible in terms of difference?
Yeah.
So in terms of verse, yeah.
In terms of the Bible, yes, the variants that we'll find in the Bible would be different. However,
On another level, higher.
even if it's higher,
Yeah.
because
It's
for
higher.
example,
Let's say, for example, this whole passage
Yes.
about the
Yes.
stoned woman.
Yes.
This one
No.
disappeared from the Vaticanus, from the
yeah, no
Sinaiticus.
problem. That's what I'm
problem.
saying. So the question would be,
But you will not find a verse completely disappearing from the manuscript compared to what we have in the Quran.
And that's why we have it intact.
we actually we do.
236 verses.
Okay.
No addition, no deletion. We don't add.
So there's a verse. Let me just show you, because when you look through, example, early Islamic scholars, they mention some of the verses that are missing. So, for example, there was a verse about breastfeeding. So do you know that? So there's a verse about 5 sucklings to make, what's it, mahram, or to make something halal.
Okay.
Let me find it for you.
No, I see. I know what you mean. I
Yeah.
know what you mean.
So that's documented within Islamic, by Islamic scholars,
Hadith, yeah, in Hadith.
that there are aspects of the Quran that have gone missing. To the same extent as the Bible, no, I will agree. But however, that claim is not 100% true either. And I will show you the evidence that there are some verses which have been claimed by Islamic scholars that were in the Quran and now not in the Quran.
Which one?
So
Which one verse?
I'll find the evidence. Let me get
So
that.
this is why
I always
I
come
said
with.
to you,
I always
like
come.
this guy liars
I
like
always.
these people.
I always come with
I like
receipts.
these liars.
Okay.
I
That's
will
why
expose his
avoiding.
lies. Watch out today. No scholar today, no scholar or previous or now says some verses are missing from the Quran.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
I will expose him today.
exactly.
He's a
Yeah,
liar.
that's why
he-
Do you know why he's a liar?
Okay.
Because he's trying to preach Jesus.
Okay.
And
That is why he.
I know-
Paul
I
said
Wait.
you can lie about Jesus.
Brother, I
To
know
preach
exactly what he
people.
wants to. I know
He's a
exactly what
liar.
he wants to. I know.
Now I will expose him because I don't like liars. He's a liar. See, he's stuck now. I'm here. No
I'm not
single
stuck on
scholar
anything.
from previous
I'll
or
find
now
the verse.
Listen,
believe
yes,
the
listen, I will say to you,
Quran.
listen,
Some verses are
whatever
missing.
hadith you
I'm
may
giving
see,
him a verse now
No,
from
but
the Bible.
no, it's
Look,
not a
brother,
hadith, it's a claim
brother,
from the
ask
scholars.
him. No claim, he's a liar. Give him this claim.
if you're gonna
Wait,
go,
wait, brother.
Brother,
Allow
let him
him.
approve.
Stop him there. Stop him there.
Siraj, let him
Bring-
finish.
show that.
Brother,
Brother, I don't want to.
Siraj,
Brother,
why are you
do not go
interrupting
far.
him?
I'm gonna, brother,
He
I'm
said
gonna.
there's
Siraj,
scholars.
Siraj,
Show us scholars.
Siraj,
No, show us
Siraj,
scholars.
Siraj, why are you
Siraj, you're
interrupting?
lying. Show us
Why are
the
you
scholars.
interrupting him?
Show
Siraj.
us the scholars.
Let him
All right,
prove.
come on.
You can't provide it.
I have the evidence.
Show
on
me
it.
the scholars.
Okay, you can't provide it. Let's switch to another subject.
Okay.
Because he's lying.
Anyway, I'm just
Yeah, go on.
like I'm saying,
While you're saying, I'll
like I'm
find
saying
it.
to you, we have the old
Speak a scholar.
tradition.
Brother, stay on the point.
No, he can't, he can't.
Said
He can't.
some scholars are saying. He said some
said our
scholars
scholars,
said. Please record me.
so
Record me,
the Quran said
brother.
it. No, it's recorded
Record
there.
me. It's
It's there.
recorded. Yes. This guy, he's a liar. He said
we know-
and lied about the scholars by saying some scholars say some
which
verses
scholars
of the
are they?
Quran are missing. I want him to show me.
Actually,
I will. Actually.
are you aware of the Sana manuscript?
Actually, so
The
now
Sana
he's changing.
manuscript.
Listen now, he's changing the topic.
All right. So
Look now, he's
if
changing.
the Sana manuscript is one of the earliest Qurans, it's a pamphlet set.
Watch out. I will listen.
And what they have done.
Where's the reference,
Look.
brother? I want the
Stop
scholars.
interrupting. This is not a
Oh,
conversation
brother,
with
why
you
would
and me.
you talk to him?
So, brother, just pay
Brother,
attention to me.
I'm giving him. Look,
Google the Sana
I'm not
manuscript.
scared. I'm giving him Christians. Some verses are missing from other versions. You know, like what? John 1.
So now
John,
what they've
chapter
done,
5,
so
verse 7.
on the text, on
John,
the top
John,
there's a
chapter
written
5,
text.
verse 4.
What
And
you will see,
Matthew,
what scholars
chapter
have done,
17, verse
they
21.
threw,
Matthew, chapter 18,
I don't know if it,
verse 11.
what it's called,
Matthew,
laser or
chapter
whatever.
24,
There's an
verse-
underlying
chapter
text
23,
of the
verse
Quran,
14.
which is
Also,
different from the
Mark
Quran that you have
chapter
now,
7,
which scholars
verse
will say
16.
came from a
Mark
different
chapter 9,
source.
verse 44.
So it was still regarded
Mark
as a
chapter
Quran, but it's
9
not
again,
consistent.
verse 46.
So just if you
Also,
Google
Luke
the
chapter
just say
17, verse 36.
it would, if you're on Wiki, it will tell you that there's an undertext that was rubbed off and rewritten, which contains a Quran
chapter 15
reading which is different from the one that you have now, but is alluded to in other texts as stated by Islamic scholars.
So that's not the Quran.
20.
What, according to them, it was. So that's what I'm saying. So the point is,
the Gospel of Luke.
you have
Just to understand, you say it's not the Quran, but then it was rewritten as the Quran.
yes,
verse what?
because remember you
Chapter
said there's different
17,
variations of the Quran.
No, I didn't say that.
In terms of, you said like vowelization, minor differences.
Vowelization,
Yes.
maybe. We
Chapter
said it's 10,
23.
maybe you find it on the.
So what I'm trying to say is this is
Verse
evidence
17.
that they writ a Quran that on the Mus'haf, they erased it and rewrit over a standardized, a more standardized version.
Chapter 15,
Okay, are you saying that the manuscript, Sana manuscript,
Yes. Shows that there was a completely different, in terms, because you remember the claim was that the variations in the Quran were not very significant, maybe minor
but you have to
differences.
understand that when you actually say, when you're actually talking, this is a bit misleading. We're not talking.
Okay, this is a scholar, Marjan van Putten. He's a leading Arab scholar.
This one is missing.
Islam, Quranic text. So in talking about the Sana manuscript, he says these differences make it quite clear that these copies are not copies of the Uthmanic text which you guys rely on, but are rather a parallel version of the Quran. The extent of the differences between these codices and the standard texts are unclear.
The report are only fragments.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. When you look at the, when you
repeat
when
that
you look
one.
at,
I want to hear.
look,
Repeat. What did he say, brother? Wait.
Re-
What
you-
says
you-
that?
If you want to read it.
Okay, listen here. This guy from not Islamic sources website.
So my point is, when you go home,
Fake
just
website,
research
brother. It's fake website. It's not Muslim Islamic. Show me.
Siraj.
Repeat. Repeat.
Stop, Siraj.
Liar.
So my point
I swear he
is,
lied.
Siraj.
He showed him from Christian website.
Siraj.
Show him.
Listen, he doesn't have the
He
scholars.
doesn't have. Yeah, he doesn't have the scholars. Allahu Akbar. Liar. He said.
So as I was saying,
Anyway,
no, but all I'm saying,
What actually you're saying,
Yeah.
it doesn't say that actually there's no difference. He said the difference are unclear.
Yes, but what I'm saying,
Talking about these dots and the
but
vowelization.
no. He says there's a parallel version.
Website.
So when I talk to you about, for example,
How
Ibn
do you think
Masud's
for
codex,
Yeah.
that was
Many verses.
his codex
Brother, please leave it with me, bro.
had noticeable.
Because this guy is a liar.
Listen,
Siraj,
listen, bro.
stop.
Brother, please. Brother, I beg.
Listen, I'm going to talk about the
I'm
Bible. I
teaching him.
didn't come to talk
I will
about
teach
this.
him.
Yeah, we could go back
Both
to the Bible.
Quran and the
But
Bible.
look at your
teach
own
him.
Muslim brother
I will teach
interrupting.
you both
your-
Quran and the Bible because you're lying.
Let's switch about this.
You
Let's
lied.
switch.
Stay on your point.
Let's switch.
He said,
Okay.
Let's say-
he
listen,
said the
listen.
scholar
Okay.
says this. What scholar says this? He doesn't
Listen,
have
like I said, the
any
difference
evidence.
about this,
A liar, this
Yeah.
guy.
I would say to you, are very minors and the vowelization. If you say a parallel text,
Yes.
which means that there's some verse which are completely different.
Yes.
And this is not saying, and you have to prove it.
Yeah, no problem. If you give me,
It doesn't matter.
we'll go on to the next subject. But let me
Like I
just.
said, at the beginning,
Right.
we have these two sources, which are, let's say, the Uthmanic Quranic book, and let's say, the manuscript, but we have as well the oral tradition.
Right.
And this oral tradition,
Let me just show you one more. Sorry to interject, but this is from the same person because I want you to research this. So he says,
lying to this.
yeah, this is Marjan. He's a scholar. You can check him on Twitter. He's a modern day scholar from Amsterdam.
The wording is quite different from the standard
Yes,
text.
the standard text is what you
But
use
what does
now.
it mean? Because we
So here's
always...
an example.
So what is it?
If you speak Arabic, so here are some of the examples. So basically, what he says that there were companions.
Difference. Taktumuna, taktumu.
Yes.
Listen, that's dialect, brother. You know dialect.
I got it.
Teach him dialect. American accent.
Yeah,
UK
Lamuna.
accent.
All right.
Difference. Listen, UK
Yahuna.
accent, American accent, Canadian accent, Canadian dialect, New Zealand dialect, American
Obviously, I'm finding it on
dialect,
spot, but I can find more
English dialect.
substantiative
It's
evidence.
that.
I just,
It's that.
I have all,
Different
I have it all.
language, same language but different dialect. This guy is
Right.
Look,
This guy
Haradahunna,
is not even
Haradahum.
proving
Right.
anything, because
I would say to you, actually, my claim, and I'm going to switch to the Bible.
No, that's fine. I have
I'm
no
going to
problem
switch to the
with.
Bible. The thing is, what I was claiming this is, you see, for us, we have these two supports. Obviously, if you want to play on this kind of difference, that's a way to play your war, to do your war against Muslim and Islam, which I see, I can see, but I would say, like,
show me the evidence.
Let's go back to the beginning.
When we take back to the Christian, like you were talking about this verse, Luke is just claiming that he's gathering information.
Right.
We having the same things in the Hadith, and we're not saying that all of them are sahih.
Right.
Some of them are completely rejected.
Right.
So, I'm saying to you, you should be careful when taking the Bible, especially the New Testament, every single verse, and take it as revealed by God, because you're going to be hit by a truck. How do you, inside of you, how do you...
But this is the first thing. And let's say I go with what you're saying. I don't agree. But here's the first thing. What are the main facts we can establish? And I want you to say whether we should take it as eyewitness or be dubious. The Christ was crucified. Should we accept that as dubious or reliable? That the disciples claim that they saw him resurrected after he was crucified. Should that be dubious, or should we accept that as an eyewitness testimony?
Okay.
So the spreading of the Gospels, the initial spread of Christianity, should we take that as dubious history, or should we take it as factual history?
I would say to you, the most important things that the Christians should rely, based on their own logic, is what Isa alayhi salam said by his own mouth.
But if, again...
And that's his teaching.
Right. So, but if someone said they saw a crucifixion, if Jesus did it, even though Jesus does speak about it, if they say they saw Jesus crucified, are you saying we should not accept that? Because in your view, Jesus never spoke a crucifixion.
I'm not even referring to the crucifixion.
Yes.
I'm just talking about the text generally.
Right. But remember, the start of Christianity and was based on the central doctrine of Christianity is the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Thank you for opening the gates. So now we're coming to it.
Right.
So you're saying this is the base of the Christianity, the crucifixion,
of course.
Resurrection. The resurrection, yeah?
The death and resurrection.
The crucifixion and the resurrection. The sacrifice for the whole humanity, for the sin of the world. Thank you. Now, I like Acts chapter 21. I like using what actually Paul said versus what actually the disciple says.
Okay.
That's what actually I would say is crucial. My vision is clear. Alhamdulillah, I remove all the glasses from anyone else. Just monotheist, and I look at the verse and I think about it.
The verse.
Exactly. You know the reason why they did not give to Jesus the person the most influence that had the most influence in the world?
What do you mean?
They did a ranking, yeah? They give it to the person who influenced the world the most. They give it to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
According to who?
No, this was like I don't know who, an atheist or maybe a Christian himself.
We'd have to substantiate that, though.
But I'm just saying, I don't care even if
That's
you
fine.
agree or don't agree.
Okay.
I'm just saying that he gave this to him because he said the problem is Jesus is sharing his glory with Paul. Because Paul is the one that seeded the Gentiles' hearts with that doctrine.
But you're moving the goalposts because their claim was about the reliability of the Bible in terms of the claims it makes about Jesus. We're not talking about the revelation itself, because you're saying, and that's what I want to be clear about, and I want to make something...
you want to say that if there was a crucifixion...
Yes, because remember what was my statement and you shook my hand? That Christianity is based on the death and resurrection of Jesus
And I say
Christ.
this this doctrine
Right.
is only based in Paul says, which for me I completely deny. And I have my says because based on his speech.
Okay, let me just address that because
That,
you're
that
wrong.
can be a different talk.
But
I can back it up.
you're wrong. Now,
Which one God inspired? You was going to say those verses which are available to King James Version
because we have the gospel writings that document the death and the resurrection. Okay. That's nothing to do with Paul. So because remember we started in Luke, and you said, was Luke an eyewitness? Because I said Luke gathered evidence from eyewitnesses. So this is not, Paul is not the sole eyewitness, because as you said, when you have Sahih chains, you may have a had one, or you may have multiple witnesses. So I'm saying Luke is appealing to witnesses. So basically what I'm trying to clarify with you is to establish why I should not believe that Christ was crucified, or that his apostles saw him
even if you take the Islamic version,
yes,
they say that it was a crucifixion, but the community doesn't believe that it was Jesus. Okay, so they say they saw Jesus, but then we do believe, like Paul was saying here, like saying when Jesus was calling for help from God, that has been helped. Whatever. We can take it in a different interpretation, but my way was just to say to you globally, if you take the Gospels literally, verse by verse, as being inspired, you'll be crushed on the wall. You'll have some problem.
No, but this is what I'm saying.
Faith. I know you try to bring me to the crucifixion to talk about the specific events,
exactly,
which I don't necessarily want to, because obviously you've been discussing with all the people, and I do not think that this is the major issue.
It is the major issue because we're looking at reliability of text, right? So then the question would be, for example, historians agree that Jesus was crucified. Why would they believe that Jesus was crucified if the main evidence that we have would be the Gospels and the account from Paul where he says he heard these things, not that he invented it himself, but he heard things that had been passed on to him.
Yeah, but the historian will always talk to you about something that they heard or something. They didn't witness it themselves. Okay. Even the people witnessing with their eyes, again, I said, the Islamic version is not denying that there was a crucifixion, but they're saying that Jesus been saved and he appeared to them as a crucifixion. You can say it in a different way. So,
but here's the problem with here's the problem. Many of the historians aren't even Christians. Here's the problem with the Quran. That's in chapter 4157. It says it appeared so, but it was not. And it says that it's the Christians.
It says should be halahum.
And it says we are in conjecture about what happened. The Jews, that we don't know what happened, but we know what happened. It's the Muslims that cannot tell us what happened. So even that is an incorrect statement, because Allah says that we believe in conjecture. When we ask a Muslim what happens, no one knows. Was it his face that was put on someone else? Did he go into a house? So all I'm trying to say is when we
Can I answer to your first claim, just the one that you said? The verse that precedes the one that you just stated is talking about the Jewish.
Yes.
No, we're not talking about the Christian.
Right.
We're talking about the Jewish. After he's talked about the Jewish, and before he talks about...
God the Father, the Son, and the Holy
If you don't mind, just shift it. I don't...
Yeah, no, that's fine.
God the Father, the Son, and the Holy
Siraj.
No,
I'm telling you right now,
I'm
bro.
standing here.
Right, don't
Siraj.
camera, bro.
The God of Jesus is only God the Father. The God of Christians is God the Father.
Sorry, shall we just go over there?
The God of Jesus is only God the Father. The God of Christians is God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And why you God is God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Why you got praise for blessings for your
Why
prophet?
your God is God the Father, the
Siraj,
Son,
Siraj,
and
will
the
you
Holy
praise
For
Spirit.
blessings. You
Why
got praise for blessings.
your God is
Who does God pray to?
Your
Allah
God,
prays
Allah does
for
not
blessings
pray.
for the
Tell
prophet.
me,
Who
tell
does
me.
Allah pray to?
Four. What's the
Sam,
what's
you see this?
What's the meaning of four?
You see this?
Listen,
So when
Christians,
Christians, when you're filming,
You did last week.
No, I'm
you
not-
did
Oh,
last
yeah,
week.
exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's
did I do
right.
this? Did I do this?
Yeah, but you did say
Okay.
If,
Okay.
I don't care about the camera.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No,
I'm saying to you.
Listen, Christians are
So like I said to you, the verse is talking. The verse is in that context. وما قتلوا وما
say Allah prayed for.
Yes,
The
so go
word
on, go
for
on.
in Arabic is what? They do not know.
وما
The
قتلوا
word to, they do not know.
Siraj,
Allah
stop.
used the word Allah. Allah
وما
means
قتلوا وما
alone.
صلبوا ولكن شبه لهم. This verse before is talking about the Jew. After he's talking about the Jewish.
Okay. Let me just bring up the verse. Yep.
Okay.
Christians apologies.
The claims that was before was the Jewish said we certainly killed the prophet of God, or
The Messiah.
Jesus, the Messiah.
Christians do not know the verse of the Quran, chapter
don't
33,
debate. Don't- listen, bro.
verse 56. They
Don't
say
give
Allah
up on
prayed
your
2
day
or
job.
4.
Do not
Allah
give
never
up on your
said
day
2
job,
or
bro,
4.
yeah? Do not
Allah
give up
used the
on your
word
day job
Allah.
because you go
2
hungry.
is Li.
You go hungry.
Allah
bro.
is
You cannot
upon.
debate.
There's
just
no
can talk,
prayer.
you don't need the
debate,
camera.
bro.
No, yeah.
You don't need the camera.
No,
to be
that's
honest,
fine.
if you can't,
He's
you don't
gonna
need the
keep
camera.
following me. Yeah.
Because
That's the problem. Like if you want to talk, we can talk, but if the camera is
Let's
still
just.
there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll just talk over here. I don't know why Siraj just needs. Yeah, no, that's fine.
I'm just saying to you, this verse.
Are you here every
talking
week though?
Huh?
Are you here every week?
Kind of, like not all the weeks, but
Okay.
anyway.
Because I'm just saying, if he keeps on time, we can continue next week.